The AI systems should emphasize the human element versus replacing it. And so as we're building out some of our new tools, we're trying to be really cognizant of when is the right time for the human to be involved, and how often, when should the human be involved in that process.
Welcome to The Growth Shift, the podcast where we unlock the psychological and strategic blueprints of predictable growth. In every episode, we dive into the critical turning points of industry leaders and uncover how they're leveraging AI not as a shortcut, but as the strategic force for their next growth shift. Today, we dive in with a leader who is defining the future of their industry. This episode is brought to you by Valentix, your strategic growth partner. At Valentix, we believe that trust and authentic relationships are the only true currency in high-value business. We challenge the status quo by building an AI-powered client acquisition engine that enhances your human connection, helping you move beyond the slow growth of referrals. Our AI-powered systems eliminate the grind, allowing you to break through the noise, automate tasks, and free up your time to focus on transformative client impact. If you're ready to build a predictable growth engine, learn more at valentix.io. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we're joined by Joseph Gosar, the founder of Gosar Consulting Group and the executive grants ecosystem. Joseph's career is a remarkable journey rooted in engineering and a passion for problem solving, spanning from designing factories to becoming a trailblazer and securing grants for manufacturers. After identifying a massive blue ocean opportunity, Joseph now leads a unique firm that helps small businesses secure funding through grants and provides comprehensive business development support, empowering experts to focus on client delivery. His insights into strategic funding, sales enablement, and building robust ecosystems offer a powerful blueprint for growth-minded entrepreneurs. Joseph, welcome to The Growth Shift.
Thank you, David.
Now, Joseph, great to have you on the show today. You have a pretty interesting background that led to an unforeseen business opportunity, let's say, right? You began as a mechanical engineer, designing factories, and you ultimately pivoted and moved into entrepreneurship. From my understanding and from the engineers that I know, many of them don't want to be entrepreneurs because they don't love engaging with people through the process as well. But that wasn't your journey. Tell us a little bit more about your background and how engineering led to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so it was my senior year, and I was interviewing for places to have my first job after college, and maybe realized that I don't think I could live in a cubicle working with the same people on the same widgets every single day. I like talking to people too much. Thought, maybe if I can work my way into management and I'm working with multiple teams and multiple locations, maybe something like that would be okay. But I'm like, that's like 5-10 years down the road. I'm going to have to grind it out in a cubicle for a long time for that to happen. I don't think I could do it. And then one day I found a job posting for what's called a sales engineer. So the idea is an engineer that actually knows how to talk to people, helps bridge the gap between the leadership at a company and the things that they're trying to design or the things that they're trying to buy in a technical sense, and the technical team that's developing it, right? And so I did that for many years, traveled the world, worked for international companies, mostly designing factories and production processes. And I quickly learned that you don't sell very many machines if you focus on the machines, but you sell a lot of machines and you design a lot of factories and you do a lot of really good work if you can build a team around you of experts from your company and other companies that are typically ahead or behind me in the production line, and show up as a unified front and focus on the client need. If you do that, the client, gets really interested in what you're doing because you're actually solving their problems instead of just giving them specs. And I quickly learned through that process of building a team and working with the client that I enjoyed working with the client more than I did engineering the machines. So I wanted to kind of pursue more of the business side of work. And I had some experience with venture capital and some internships and things like that kind of got me. I was already business minded before I even graduated. And so I went to work for a nonprofit. There's a version of it in every state. It's a federally funded nonprofit. It's part of the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technologies. It's called the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. There's a center for it in every state. And essentially, their job is to meet with manufacturing business owners and to help them understand what's broken with their business. And then in Washington State, where I was working for a company called Impact Washington, my job was to help them take those things that were broken in their business and to help leverage state and federal funds and programs to help them fix those problems. So it was, instead of designing the factory, I was helping design the process to improve the business. And that was really fun. And I was really, really good at it, incredibly good at it. And I loved it. But what kept hitting me, and for the 4 years that I did that, even though I was doing millions and millions of dollars worth of grant work and helping manage millions and millions of dollars worth of grant work, I would help, a manufacturer, and we'd secure $100, $200, $500, $750,000 in grants in a go. His cousin would come to me that owns a restaurant, says, "Hey, could you help me too?" And for 4 years, I had to say no because they weren't a manufacturer and they didn't have the certain size requirements and all these things. And I did everything I could to help them. But after 4 years of almost every week, these other industries coming to me and just saying, "Hey, I see what you're doing here. Could we do it too?" When it came time for me to leave Impact Washington, which I still love them, by the way, they're amazing. I 100% agree with and support their mission. There's no hard feelings there, but it just was time. I knew that one of the things I wanted to do moving forward was, instead of just focusing on primarily 50 employee plus manufacturers, I wanted to help kind of everybody that I saw that was struggling. And that's, for the last couple of years, what I've been doing. And it's been an absolutely crazy journey across the United States and across different business structures and ideas. And that's what's led us to the expert grant ecosystem and Gosar Consulting the way that it is formed today and the way that it's evolving over time.
I love this. This is a great lesson for entrepreneurs, would-be entrepreneurs, people who want to start a business but maybe aren't necessarily sure where to start, right? Especially those who are working within larger organizations or companies, right? Those companies, they make decisions based off of their long-term strategic decisions and their operational capacity. And if you're in an organization where potential clients or people are coming to you asking to solve a problem and you have to constantly say no because it's not aligned with the company's long-term strategic decision, doesn't mean the company's not good to be at, but it's a great insight for you to see that there is a real need. People are asking for this. And if you're in that position where you're constantly saying, "No, we can't deliver this," or "No, that's not how we do that," I mean, with enough people asking, you got to start asking yourself, is this an opportunity for myself? Can I pursue this? There is a clear need and a desire that should be fulfilled, right? Then the next question just is, how do you start fulfilling that? So Joseph, this was a growth shift moment for you, right? You recognize that this is a massive opportunity. How did you start to seize that opportunity?
I want to step back maybe just a little bit and help people that are listening to the podcast identify when this moment is happening for them. So I kind of think of two things. One, I call it the castle moment. After building my territory and building my sales funnel and building my project in my client base, I realized that even though I love Impact Washington and it's amazing, that at the end of the day, I was building their castle more than I was building mine, if that makes sense. And that they, when I leave, they get to keep it. I don't get to keep it. They get to keep it. And there was an element of, I think I can do this, right? So I call it the castle moment. There's kind of a pivotal moment, whether independent of what industry you're in, where you're like, I think I could do this. And then the second thing I would say is, in Impact Washington, I will say was one of probably the best company I ever worked for in terms of evolving and thinking strategically and adding new systems and new technologies and really being progressive. But because they're fairly funded and tied to manufacturing, they had a lot of shackles in what they could do. Or I had a lot of shackles in what I could do and who I could help and how I could help them. And so it was the combination of that castle moment and then me just really sitting down and thinking, if the handcuffs were taken off, how much harder could I be swinging? Right? Like doing great work now, but if I was building it for myself and if I could make some of these decisions and if I could do it the way that I see it could be done and way that kind of starting from scratch, how could I do this better? How could I do this different? How could I do this better? How would this be more fulfilling for me? And so it was really kind of those things that came together that kind of pushed me to say, and also my wife just saying, "Hey, I think you could be helping more people." I think you should be helping more people. You're helping a lot of people, but I think you should. I think this could be a lot bigger. I had a combination of all those things kind of coming to a head, and me just saying, I don't know exactly how I'm going to make this work or what direction I'm going to go, but I know that I need to be building my castle. And I know that I need to have the handcuffs taken off so that I can really work at my potential, versus kind of within the box that I'm in now.
Absolutely. So you had the castle moment. You had the handcuffs on. Some people see that as red tape as well, especially in larger organizations, highly regulated ones. You wanted to free yourself so you could swing harder, right? You could go for those home runs, and you could keep the castle at the end of the day as well.
Yep.
How did this then translate to Gosar Consulting Group and executive grants ecosystem today? What is it that you're actually doing now after having these realizations and noticing this opportunity that you decided to pursue?
Yeah. So there's been a couple iterations of what we're doing and how, and pivots. So really doubling down on the consulting and training side of things. I launched Gosar Consulting Group just about 2 years ago. And because I had this expertise in grants and I was really good at that, and I had that background, we were in Utah at the time, and they have some good grant systems there. And I just started doing what I did for Impact Washington for my own business, for my own consulting and training business, and built out a lot of materials and a lot of courses. And I got a lot of traction. I think at one point, within the first 6 months, I had well over 20 clients that I was working with. And you can only do that for so long before other consultants kind of pull you aside and say, hey, how are you doing this? Right? Well, I'm doing it because the state's paying for 40% of my fees because I'm leveraging grants. Mm-hmm. I can work with more people, and the people that I work with can afford more. Even if, I can work with people that couldn't afford my services in the first place. So that's a big blue ocean. And then the people that can afford this kind of training and consulting, the way that I package it, they can do 40% more. So, because in Utah, for example, they cover 40% or routinely cover 40%. And so these other consultants kind of came to me and said, hey, could you mentor me on this? I'm willing to pay you per hour. And I considered it. But at the end of the day, I was like, I would rather have more of like a partnership type relationship with you than a mentorship relation. Like, because, long term, I'll teach you what I know today, but, long term, you won't know what I know tomorrow if it's just a mentor type thing, unless you keep paying me, which I didn't like that as much.
Smaller castle moment, the gatehouse to your castle, we could call it, right? Realizing that, yep. Hey, why don't we just add to my castle instead of starting to build someone else's?
Yep. And so we did that. We did that for a while, where Gosar Consulting Group was the main company, and then they were subcontractors that we have been training in to help us execute and deliver and find clients. And we were growing that and growing that and growing that. And then recently, within the last couple months, came to the conclusion that the consulting and training side of what I do is so different than this ecosystem of experts that I'm developing and all this grant work. I need to split these into two companies. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're in the process of doing now, is taking Gosar Consulting Group, and that's going to be me and the projects I deliver and the projects I find and the things that I'm working on myself. But then I'm also the president of a new organization called the Expert Grants Ecosystem, which what I love about it, and we talked about the castle moment, I didn't want to create a system that removes that feeling of it's their castle for all these experts that we're working with. Mm-hmm. So the beauty of this new Expert Grant Ecosystem is it's a software platform and an accounting platform and a back-end platform and like all the not so fun parts of being a trainer, the billing, the booking, the scheduling, we automate, and a lot of the marketing tools, a lot of that stuff we automate, and we take that on as a group. But the experts that we work with, they still own their own businesses. We are a back end provider. We are accelerating what they're doing versus taking it away. So it's their clients, it's their business, they're building their brand too. We're just accelerating that. So what I love about this is kind of, again, going back to the castle idea, they're still building their own castle. I'm just giving them some templates and some additional tools and additional workers to help build it faster. And so there's a deep sense of community and growth mindset and sharing of information and tools. And that's kind of by nature with it. And I really like that concept because there's a lot of consulting groups out there that you're just doing a job and, it's not yours. I didn't want to take that away from people. I wanted them to be able to run their own business. And Gosar Consulting Group is a client of Expert Grant Ecosystem. My company has to deal with all the same headaches and challenges and things that all of my clients will be dealing with Expert Grant Ecosystem too. So it's not a do what I say and, it's my company kind of thing. This is something that I'm making to help me and to also help everybody in the ecosystem. So it's been really fun to see do that shift in my mindset of I'm a consulting company that's subcontracting other consultants to I'm building something nationally that will allow these other consultants to also get the state to pay for 25, 40, 50, 100% of their training and consulting projects. So
something that I love, not necessarily just about the strategic setup of the two entities, something that I love about your positioning and the strategy is that you've not only identified a blue ocean, but you've created one as well, right? And what I mean by that is, sure, there's that blue ocean of smaller businesses who have needs for these grants, but the ocean that you've then created off the back of that as well is an additional segment of these businesses who don't have the money to invest in those services, who now do from the grants as well. So you've identified people who can afford it and can invest, and you can invest more, but now you've also created an ocean of businesses who can now pursue this as well through the work that you offer.
And I would say that's maybe a third thing for people to look at when they're trying to decide, should I go and do my own thing? So you've got the castle moment, you've got, hey, if I could take the shackles off, how much harder could I hit? And then I would say kind of that third one is, are there two broken systems, at least two, maybe more, are there at least two broken systems that how can I take two broken systems and create a solution that takes the strengths and weaknesses from both and fixes both at the same time? So in our case, we have all of these consultants that actually, if you get a bunch of consultants in a room, especially if they're in the same geographical area, they want to work together, right? The sales trainer is like, yeah, I would love to be able to have somebody come in and help my client with their bookkeeping because I can increase their sales all day long. But if their books are an absolute mess and their processes are an absolute mess, there's all these other things, all these other holes in the boat that I need filled up. I would love to have a network of people that could just take care of that so that I could focus on the sales. Well, that's what the expert grant ecosystem does. Additionally, all of these experts, they're always complaining that because you have to charge a decent amount of money to do this kind of work. You just do. It's not cheap to do this kind of work. And they're always complaining that, they run into clients and they just, yeah, I would love to do this, but I have to push it off because I can't afford it. So that's kind of a broken system. The whole way that experts are, especially solo experts in the USA, at least now, I feel like is kind of a broken system. You basically have the choice of kind of running this solo thing that you have some loose alliances with other people and you're having a hard time. You only have like 3 to 5, maybe 10 clients at max. And if one of them leaves, you're worried about the mortgage on your house. If you get sick and you can't work for a little bit, you're not making any money. And like, you kind of have that world, or you have to go work for a firm that you're kind of soulless, maybe even some like quasi money laundering level business practices. And a lot of what you do, is just reports that sit on a shelf. And so I talk to a lot of experts and a lot of consultants and trainers, and they kind of have to choose between those two worlds, and both of those are broken. Okay, well, that's a broken system. Consulting training, it's a broken system. And then on the flip side of it, the affordability and the grant system. So the United States puts like $30 billion a year into incumbent worker training and upskilling and like all of these things, but it's mostly going towards like forklift certifications and additional CDL license and stuff, which is good. We need that. But we also need small businesses to be winning. And so this broken system of technically all these small businesses qualify for all of these grants and funding programs, but those grants and funding programs have typically, a very, very small percentage of who they're actually giving the money to is small businesses. Almost all hospitals, and like bigger companies and the Amazons of the world are using these programs every year, all day long, all the time. Small businesses aren't. So that's another broken system. Well, how do I fix one broken system with another broken system? And when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, that's where the real magic happens, when you take at least two broken systems and figure out how do I combine them and actually fix both with each other.
So we're talking about your strategy right now, your positioning. When it comes to the further growth of Expert Grant ecosystem and the Gosar Consulting Group, you're mentioning a couple of things that you've been doing: automating, marketing, and using AI as part of this as well. What does that growth strategy look like today when we're looking at client acquisition being one of the biggest drivers of growth? What is it that you're doing today to actively pursue this next level of growth?
Yep. So, and maybe this will inspire some people as well. So I'll kind of give the lay of the land of where we're at right now as of today. So we've been lucky and also kind of cursed that a lot of our businesses come from referrals and networking groups and word of mouth, and which is wonderful. But one of the challenges with that is the pool, the pond in which we're fishing are the people that go to networking events and the people that have time to go to chamber events and that associate with people that go to chamber events. And so there is an element of, are we fishing in all the ponds that we should be, or are we just kind of fishing in the ponds that we have access to right now? And I think there's a challenge and a deciding, some decisions that we have to make in relation to that. But I will say strategically, a couple things that we're doing under Expert Grant Ecosystem is we're building out our contracts and everything in there so that when an expert joins and when they're really at the deepest level of integration, we're able to, do social posting on. So we've got all these businesses that are all linked together, but we're able to do social posting, and we have our podcasts and we have our networking events and we have all these things that we're going to be able to do together. So for example, if I'm teaching a client and I say something really cool and it's just really awesome, we're going to contractually and technologically have the ability to repeat that message on all of our sister businesses, social medias, and like all of that. Like we'll be able to funnel our marketing efforts so it's not just one-offs, right? As we come across really cool things, as we come across funnels, as we build things out, we're able to actually disperse it. And then we're also building systems where we're able to do that with our referral partners as well. So as we build out our referral partner system, let's say we hear about some amazing grants. So I'll give you an example. Wyoming, part of why we moved to Wyoming is Wyoming has amazing grants right now. It's 100% coverage if you do it right, up to $75,000 a year for pretty much every single business. And there's caveats to that, and I'd have to tell you about it. But it's amazing. It's absolutely fantastic, and every business in Wyoming should be taking advantage of it. Well, one of the things that we're going to be doing is, if we hear about this, we want to, spread this on social media, we'll be able to do that through all of our channels and through all of our relationship channels as well. So we're not just posting it on, a couple different pages. We're spreading this out as much as we can. And so I think there's an element of what I would say to people that are listening. How do you reframe your relationships so that you're spreading each other's good news? And you're doing it in a way that's legal and safe and makes sense and not labor heavy. How do you automate some of that? How do you take the things that you're doing and get it out to the world in maybe a little bit different way than just, you can record something nice and post it on your LinkedIn, but that's one place. You've got lots of friends. You've got other people you work with. You've got employees. How do you get that out there in a way that doesn't require every single one of them to go and click and download and upload and create a post every single time you want to do it? That's ridiculous.
So you're creating an ecosystem here, essentially a cohesive ecosystem across all of your platforms and channels, especially from the marketing side of things for client acquisition, where one piece of content or marketing material that's created can automatically add to or be posted across this ecosystem for saving time and increasing outreach as well as brand exposure at the end of the day, right? For any consultant in that position where they are blessed but also cursed, being reliant or grown from referrals, by doing so and leveraging AI and automation in this way, you can drastically enhance your reach and drastically enhance that top of funnel appearance. So I love the approach you're taking here. Joseph, AI and automation are a pretty big part of your business, right? We just highlighted a couple of areas that are extremely beneficial for businesses, especially small businesses who are perhaps a little bit restrained, right? They don't have the capacity, they don't have the size of the team, they don't have the the funding immediately to go and start doing all of these things. So it's a great advantage. But when we look at businesses, where do you think the greatest risks are with AI? Where does AI start to potentially cause problems, or is there a line that you'd say maybe shouldn't be crossed?
So I think that the risks really come down in my mind to, and I know we've talked about this before, when you're building out, so AI systems are used a lot, and you know this in client acquisition and client conversion, client retention. As you're doing that, the AI systems should emphasize the human element versus replacing it. And so as we're building out some of our new tools, we're trying to be really cognizant of when is the right time for the human to be involved, and how often, when should the human be involved in that process, and making sure that people have the option and ability, even if the AI is taking care of most of the work, and even if it just doesn't look like the AI is doing that, that when they do, ask for help, that a human is at least seeing that and responding to that, and being involved enough that they can override things and get things going. So I think that's an element that it should be enhancing the relationships and versus replacing them. But then I also think another element of this is, I think a lot of people they have a very narrow view of what AI can be used for and where it should be used. And I know I've been guilty of this in the past too, but I'll give an example of our business, and one of the switches that we're making as we're going from, Gosar Consulting Group being the main company to Expert Grant Ecosystem being my main focus. So we're doing grants all over the country. We're going into new states. We're learning new grants. We're learning new systems. We're working with new admins all the time. There's a lot of tribal knowledge there, right? And we've built out systems. We've built out tools to help us understand what those grant requirements are, what they'll pay for, what they won't, how it all works, what the process is, all the questions, all the forms. We've built all of that out, but still a lot of it's still in my brain. And so instead of just having these proprietary systems and this proprietary knowledge that is kind of locked behind, in tribal knowledge, how do we implement AI in relation to that to help our experts and help our strategists as we're helping people sign up for these grants to do it in a much more efficient way? So how do we take this tribal knowledge, create databases, and then connect AI to it so that the AI is helping us fill out the forms? The AI is helping us write a report on what the process is with this admin in this state with this type of grant. Instead of everyone having to know everything, how do we get the systems to know stuff and create reports and generate content and all of that for us, so we avoid fat fingering mistakes and proposals that have something wrong on them? But also, how do we speed up the process? And the deciding factor for me on when and where to include AI in all of this as I'm building this out and improving all of these systems that we already have, all of these proprietary systems, is it enhancing the relationship with the client and allowing the expert to focus more on the client in that conversation. So again, small example, we're filling out a template on the financials of a project with a grant. I don't want the consultant having to worry about which cell or which field to fill in. I want them to be having a conversation and for the AI to pop in and say, hey, just as a reminder, this is the deadline, or this is the total dollar amount that you can apply for, or we've scheduled too many sessions. I want it to be giving more like a co-pilot where the expert is focusing on the client, and when the client says, oh, can we increase this course, this training from 4 sessions to 7 sessions, instead of the expert having to go into that sheet and fill in and change the number and calculate things. They're just able to tell the AI, increase this from 4 to 7 and move it around or whatever, adjust everything and write a new proposal, right? Mm-hmm. How do we get it so that it's working with the humans so that the humans can do what humans do best? And that's just one example from kind of our internal processes.
Couldn't agree more with this approach, right? And exactly as you're saying, right? Especially with AI as it is today, right? You can't just be handing off things that are to client, or you can't be handing off things to AI that are potentially, very real, potentially going to be impacting that client experience, right? So using it for efficiency and accuracy and speed and saving time, yes, absolutely. But the purpose of that is that so you can then focus on that client interaction, build more trust, build a deeper relationship, really focus on what is it that they need and what can I provide to further their results. Right? So I love how you guys are using it there internally. Definitely the right approach as AI is today. Who knows?
I love this idea that AI implementation, and I can't remember if you said this or another one of my friends said this, that's an AI nerd, but he said, it ingrained in my mind, I just can't attribute it to the right person. So if you said this, I'm sorry. But he said that AI implementation is a 30-40-30 rule. So 30% of how well it's implemented has to do with how it's coded and how it's trained. 40% is the actual execution that it does and the things that it takes off your plate. But then there's a 30% that is the initial input of what you ask it each time you're asking it to do something. And where most people get it wrong is they focus so much on the training and so much on the outcome, and then they just kind of hand off to the client. Oh, go on my website and just deal with this chat bot. And never talk to a person until you're ready to be sold. No, because that first 30% is the human element of how do I convey what's in my head and in my heart to the AI in a way that the AI can then do what it does really good, which is the research and the documentation and the execution of the good coding and programming. If that initial input isn't good, it really struggles. And so as we're building out these tools, that's one of the things that we're keeping in mind is the client might say, I want to increase this from 4 to 7. And if you just gave that to the AI, it would do it. But you need that human expert in there to say, okay, if we increase that from 4 to 7, where do we need to pull from? And why are we increasing it from 4 to 7? And should we be increasing it? Those are the questions that the AI can't do very well. And I don't know if it ever really will, because it only understands the context that you've given it. Humans are much better at understanding the emotional, right? Are you increasing it from 4 to 7 because emotionally you're scared of something? Should you be scared of that thing? Is that the right move from a strategic standpoint, or are we just giving the AI information and it's just running with it? There's a danger there that we give up so much control. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to build is we're building out our companion tools, as for some of the things that we're teaching is how do we do that in a way that allows the expert, again, to focus on the things that humans do really well, which is the intuition and I call it business therapy side of the conversation. And then how do we take off of their plate now I've got to calculate this thing and focus my attention on that, which humans aren't that great at. We fat finger things, we mess things up, we put in the wrong rates, we click the wrong button all the time. How do we use the two tools?
Excellent insights. Joseph, your story covers engineering innovation, strategic problem solving, and a deep commitment to empowering small businesses. For the listeners out there who are navigating their own growth shift right now, what's the single most important piece of advice that you would leave them with about identifying blue ocean opportunities and building a truly impactful business?
Take a look at the skill sets that you bring to the table and the areas of expertise that you have, because they're probably a lot more valuable than you're giving them credit for, especially if you can put them in the right context, and especially if you can take those two broken systems and make them whole. So I'll give an example. I know we're running out of time, but I'll give a real quick example. I was talking just yesterday to a client of ours, and he's been doing tailoring for 30 years, tailoring suits, really nice suits, like custom suits. He has his own suit line, and he goes to the client and he tailors suits for clients. And really amazing guy. And in his mind, he's a tailor. But in talking to him, no, you've got 30 years of experience in tailoring. Yes, we're going to help you build and get some grants to help you build your suit line and your tailoring service. But how do we take that area, that expertise, and make it so you're able to make money not having to tailor every single suit, right? How do we make you the master tailor that's bringing on apprentices to learn these things and building out systems that would be really difficult for other people to just compete with you on, and really premium? And like, how do we take this 30 years of experience and how do we monetize it? Because in his mind, I'm just good at making suits. Yes, but you've got so much knowledge in this. How do we build a business that actually leverages that knowledge? And honestly, I remember before I made my big switch, I'm like, I've got all this engineering knowledge. I know about grants. I know about consulting and working with clients. How would I even monetize that, right? I couldn't see at the beginning of my journey how all of this would fit together. I just had to jump, but the end goal is in that jump. Where do you have an unfair advantage? In his field, he's got more tailoring knowledge than pretty much anybody else in the country. He knows all the fabrics. He is an expert in that. How do we monetize that beyond you just doing hourly work for people? How do we disengage, take that massive advantage that you have and disengage it from an hourly rate?
Definitely profound. Joseph, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your story with the audience today. For anyone listening who might like to learn more about Gosar Consulting Group, maybe a grant would be right for them. What would be the best way to find you?
Yep. So we're launching Expert Grant Ecosystem's website. So it's not up yet. So there's nothing really to search yet. It's a brand new transition that we're making. So for now, the best way to contact us is to actually go on our website, gosarconsulting.com. So that's GOSAR consulting.com. And you can actually schedule a free consultation right there. You'll get a copy of my book. And that's kind of our main funnel right now that people can look up. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Joseph Gosar, Gosar, and we can connect there as well. Either way.
Amazing. Thanks again for joining us today on The Growth Shift.
Thank you, David.
Another powerful conversation on The Growth Shift. If you, like our guests, are ready to turn your expertise into a predictable, scalable growth engine, one that eliminates the grind of prospecting and enhances your high-value relationships, then it's time to connect with Valentix. We are not a marketing agency. We are your strategic growth partner, building intelligent systems that ensure your client acquisition is predictable, not dependent on chance. To see how our AI-powered frameworks can free up your time and fill your calendar with decision makers, visit valentix.io. Thank you for joining us on The Growth Shift. We'll see you next time.